My name is Rabia Malik, and I took over chairing from Asim Siddiqui. One thing the City Circle did share in common with many Muslim organisations for a while was that Asim had a long reign of 6 years, and it took us a while to create some change. But that was because he was actually exceptionally good at it, and if you know Asim, you know how diplomatic he is and what a chair par excellence he is. So it was hard to follow in his footsteps. But also, I think one of the distinctive things for me was being the first female chair of City Circle. And I know that I was asked twice to do it, and the first time I said no, and then the second time I relented. And just to give you an idea, I guess, about our identity changes and development as a community, I mean, I had a real consideration about what it would be like to be a woman and to be the chair of an organisation like the City Circle. And now I look back and it seems kind of ludicrous, but at the time I really didn't know how people would perceive me as a Muslim woman, and also whether I felt like I could, if I felt like I could represent City Circle, and also whether I would get legitimacy from the Muslim community, whether people would judge me or see me for wearing hijab and things like that. And those kinds of issues came up for me, and I know those issues are still alive for people. But a really wonderful thing for me about City Circle is that it is truly professional, unlike many other Muslim organisations where I feel like we're still bogged down in really petty politics about things to do with gender, things to do with, what sect you come from, all of those matters. Those things didn't figure at City Circle, and they haven't really in the management process, which is what makes it a really good organisation to be on the management board and a trustee, which I still am, for. So it's been an important organisation in my own kind of development. I also just want to say something really personally about what City Circle meant to me as a member of the audience, because I hope it might resonate with some of you, because just like we're telling our stories, you've also all got your own stories and experiences to tell. And I really remember coming to City. I've gone to a few events at Toynbee Hall when it was in East London, but I really remember coming here just after the 7th July bombings and really needing to find a space where I felt safe enough to speak and say something about what had happened and hear other people talk about it in a way that came from within the Muslim community. And I remember there were film crews here and the hall was absolutely packed. And it was a really significant moment because I think it was about young Muslims finding their voice and expressing their voice and wanting to be heard and not for Islam to be dismissed, but to really try and put forward something that was constructive, and that was a British Islam. And I think that's what we've been in the process of doing. So I chaired City Circle from 2010 to 2011, and I followed really in the footsteps of Asim and also Yahya Burt, who isn't here today, and Osama Hassan, which some of you will remember and know. And so you can see the range of people that have really been at the forefront of leading this organisation. And I'll also later mention the people who subsequently led us to where we are now. Of course, City Circle dealt with, and the first half of this session has been a lot about kind of politics and the bigger issues, especially kind of post 9/11 and post 7/7. But actually, I think one of the things we were already aware of was that we also really needed to get our own house in order. And so Rashad talked about how City Circle was an open space, and it really has been a space not just for dealing with big political issues, but also for dealing with social and communal issues and spiritual matters. We've had a lot of talks on spirituality, but from people who come from varying perspectives. So the community development aspect has been a really significant part of our work. And in the panel that I have with me now, we have people who either founded or who have been developing and working on the projects and initiatives that came out of City Circle in terms of community building. So one of the most significant achievements of City Circle was the schools-based projects, which were really about mentoring and helping young Muslims in terms of developing their education, Islamic education as well as like maths and English and those things. And I think that in the early days was really set up by Munir and Underleen. And Underleen, who's also a trustee, who wasn't here, has put huge amounts of work into that school. But currently we have Zishan, who's the head teacher of the Saturday school at the Muslim Cultural Heritage Centre, who we partner with. And we also have Muhammad, who's the head teacher of the new school that was set up in Harrow, which is the largest mosque in the UK. So I'm going to pass it over to them to just say a few things about those projects and where they're at now.
Hi, assalamu alaikum everyone. So I don't know how much all of you know about the City Circle Saturday School, but it is quite a remarkable project. It's been going for almost 15 years now, and what first started off as a homework club, as a place where students could come for mentoring, is now a school with about 112. We have 112 students. We have a waiting list of about 100 students as well. We teach classes all the way from year 4 through to A-level. We're focusing on maths, English and Islamic studies. But beyond the academic subjects which we teach, one of the things that we try and do at the Saturday School is provide role models for the children. Almost all of the students we have will either be first or second generation immigrants. Their parents either may not have been to university, or if they have, will typically have been to university outside the country. So often they won't be familiar with the education system and how to navigate it. And often the children may not have people around them who can help raise their aspirations. So our teaching staff is completely composed of volunteers, people like you. We've got about maybe 20, 25 volunteers who give up every Saturday to come and teach these children. And I think that's also a remarkable thing, and it's also a privilege. It's an opportunity for people to go and shape a future generation. And there's not many places where you will get to spend 2, 3, 4 hours, on a Saturday morning and have such an impact on someone, potentially for the rest of their lives. Now, I mentioned we have about 20, 25 teachers, and as with any volunteer organisation, we do always need a supply of new volunteers. Right now, we have vacancies. We're looking for people who are willing to come and help teach maths in particular, but also help out with the primary children in Islamic studies. We could do with a couple of extra teachers as well. So I would urge any of you who might be interested, if that sounds like something that you might be interested in. There's no commitment. We're not going to make you sign a form and sign away all your Saturday mornings just yet, but come and have a word with me after this session, and you're welcome to come along, visit the school, sit in a class or two, and see if it's the kind of thing that you might want to get involved in. Okay. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm not too sure how much I can add to what is said right now, but I guess I'll pick up on just a couple of things that we've seen at Harrow just in the 1.5 years that we've been running. Obviously, we're a much smaller school, from year 4 to 7, we have about 40 students. But I guess in terms of two particulars I think I'll mention, number one, I guess, is some of the problems that I guess are common problems with West London School as well. As unfortunately parents. The children, mashallah, once they come in at 10 o'clock, they are brilliant. And we have very, very few problems, to be fair, with any of the students. And I guess perhaps that's only because we've gone up to year 7, and I'm sure when we get up to year 11 it will be a different story. But the challenge is quite often with parents bringing in their children every week to school, bringing them in on time, and showing them the kind of discipline that they need in order for them to go on to further education at university or even to A-level, so on and so forth. So I know both schools are really trying their hardest to encourage parents and show them the importance of bringing their children to the school. I guess one of the reasons that they're at the school in the first instance is because they are ultimately behind in their studies. And I guess one of the reasons that the school was set up is it was devised for children who aren't quite at the national level and who really need to be spending their Saturday mornings and perhaps increased time studying maths and English to get up to speed on generations of people who have come to the UK recently. In Harrow, obviously, the nationalities you have there are generally Pakistani, Afghani, and some Somalians as well. That's the general mixed population. But the newer Muslims who are coming into Harrow, they have children who have, whether it be learning disabilities and the like, of struggling and not knowing the kind of services that are out there, whether that be within the NHS or within the school system, and need quite a lot of direction in terms of sourcing that out, whether it be because they don't speak the language, which is obviously the biggest issue, or whether that be because they don't know it's there. And so we're quite often finding that children are coming into school, and luckily for us, alhamdulillah, we have what's known as a special educational needs teacher who's able to give a vague diagnosis of if there is an issue with a child, if they have any learning disabilities. And quite often parents aren't fully aware of the issue that their children are facing at school and the troubles that they're having. So I think it's very important just for us as a community, when seeing and having these people enter into our communities to help them and to guide them and support them in finding the right services for their children, if required.
I think to stress that, Fuad made the point about, this is a sector of the Muslim community, it's not necessarily representative of it, but there was a real spirit from very early on to want to give something back to the community, to want to use our skills and resources in a way that would help others. And I think that school project's a really prime example of that, because the other thing is it's really significantly changed the results of a lot of those children who attended that Saturday school. And I know at least 1 or 2 students have gone on to Oxford and Cambridge. So those are real significant achievements in terms of the lives of the coming generation. Another couple of projects which I'm now going to pass on for Toynbee and Sylvia to talk about are the homelessness project. And that also has been, I think, an invaluable project in terms of not just addressing the needs of Muslims, but addressing the needs of Londoners who are homeless more generally. And also Sylvia's work with younger children in setting up Islamic schools in North London, mainly North West London. So I'm going to pass over to Toynbee now, who really spearheaded the homelessness work for us.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I ran the homeless project from 2006 to 2012, but the work around homelessness existed in some form since the very inception of City Circle. The early ideas were very, very sort of simple around providing food for homeless people, initially during the month of Ramadan. And as our fundraising improved and we had more money available, we started working with homeless shelters and provided food pretty much every Friday of every month for many years, and fed lots and lots of homeless people that way. And sometimes often even delivering food to rough sleepers as well whenever we had volunteers available. As we got more established, we worked with homeless shelters to provide skilled individuals to go in and help people who are homeless people either living at the shelters or visiting the shelters to learn how to use a computer, fill in benefits forms, anything to help them get them off the streets. We provided skills such as getting Muslim volunteers, so many volunteers really, who went in and painted shelters or just did all sorts of odd jobs around them, but gave homeless individuals someone to speak to. We even spearheaded a mentoring campaign for a little while. Later on, we worked with homeless charities to provide Muslim professionals who could sit on the board as trustees. The social sector trying to get trustees because it's not paid. You don't normally attract the calibre of professionals that you need. So they were very grateful to get lawyers and accountants and PR people who kind of help take their charities forward. And then as we had more fundraising initiatives and had much more money available in the homeless project, thanks to lots of kind donations at our fundraising events, we worked in conjunction with homeless charities to provide grants to individuals, mainly former rough sleepers who were off the streets living in sheltered accommodation who wanted to really sort out their lives. A lot of that money was used in things like setting up small businesses, running market stalls, buying laptops jobs, things that would basically keep them off the streets, and that was a very successful initiative. Separately, another project that we ran was the Kosovo Orphanage Project, which some of you may remember. We had a massive fundraising event, I think in 2007, and raised nearly £40,000, which is quite a lot of money back then for one fundraising event. And that money was used to build a version of an orphanage in Kosovo, where it was much more, it wasn't specifically young people in the sense of young children, but it was children who'd been born or around the Kosovo War, and 10 years later were 12, 13, 14, 15 without parents, who basically didn't have much of a future, and the idea was to give them skills that would keep them off the streets, away from gangs, which was becoming a big problem in Kosovo, and get them jobs. And that project is still running today in conjunction with Islamic Relief. So just some of the things that we did in the few years that I was in charge.
Assalamualaikum. I ran a project from 2004 where I thought to reach the age where I felt that we needed to inject some Islamic spiritual growth, and although we talk about not trying to do that in City Circle, actually we were one of the first few that were married. There's a few at the end over there, the oldies as we call them. We had babies in 1999, and we used to be hanging around at the back when they used to cry. And so by the time 2004, 2005, I felt that we needed to set something up for the next generation. And we went to the mosques, we looked at our local communities, and there wasn't much around in terms of, we don't want to send them to the mosque 5 days a week for 2 hours and get them to rote learn. But then there weren't any other options. So what we did at that point, a few of us, and we were living in Wembley at that point, got together and we created a little club of 7, there were about 4 moms, 7 children, 1 class, and we just wanted Islam to be fun, but we wanted them to learn the Quran, and we wanted them to learn it correctly, so we wouldn't have to relearn it many years later, like many of us ended up having to do. So, and have fun with it, and to learn about Islamic stories without there being this dogma around it, and just supported by the local community. And within a year, those 7 children, we had about 4 classes running with about 4 or 5 teachers, and that was the need. But we did it, ours was different from the Saturday schools, and even then there weren't huge Saturday schools. There was Nisa, of course, in Wembley, but there weren't many Saturday schools at that point. What I wanted was something that would be integrated into their normal week, just like an after-school club, like you would have an Arabic class, etc. So we ran that, and it's still running in Wembley. They called it the Jannah Club, and the children, and it's still running, from 2004. I moved on, went to Harrow. We set up with Amina, who's at the back, Olive Arabic School, and then went to Dubai, and then we came back. And actually, even in Dubai, there wasn't many options, because you still have a very old model of teaching children the Quran. Even now, there aren't many spaces where we can teach our children Islam in a fun way without it just being on a weekend. And, to try and integrate it within our week, to just make it natural and normal. And from that, we came back in Northwood, and it's still running, we created a school called City Circle Children's Club. And I've been running that for 5 years. And again, we've got 5 classes. And there's a real need for more, I would say, mothers and fathers to come forward. I know, City Circle is a lot of professionals, but many of you are now married, many of you are having children, and this is something you're going to have to consider. So wherever you move on to, a project which is actually there just for your local community, where you can get, local Muslim children to have an environment which is fun, where there's, during our, we spearheaded many charity events which were fun. We had days out, every term we order in pizza, and we talk about different Islamic stories. So we wanted the children to have a sense of fun whilst learning Islam, as opposed to just sitting and reading and reading. And I'd say, actually, it's been successful in that, my children learned to read the Quran. I hope they had fun. I don't know, they're at the back. They're teenagers now. So we've been through the process. But I will say that it's been tough, actually, to get volunteers. And I know mums are busy, and I know they've got a lot of, commitments. But I will say that it's been very hard. I know the Saturday school have always had willing volunteers, but one of the things I think that has stopped the idea expanding is people's commitment to actually follow through on what they would really like, but they don't want to actually follow through on. And it does mean that you have to take out some time, but you do get from it. And I think, unfortunately, I haven't had, that much enthusiasm from people, to be able to continue that. So I've had to close the school down in Watford, where I am now. I created one because there was a need in the community. And I said, you have to, as a community, you have to shape it. I'll help you get the teachers. We'll try and, put a nice curriculum together. But it has to be run by yourselves, by the people that are within the community. Only you know what works. But one thing we said, it had to be, relevant. And it had to have, an input from those that were part of the community. And unfortunately, that didn't work out. But, we've still got Wembley. There's still one in Northwood running. But it's an ongoing project. So if anyone is interested, or if you know anyone who'd like to set up a project that runs during the week to help children with their Islamic education, then do get in touch. Thank you.
We really wanted to highlight those community building aspects of our work, because so often people come to City Circle and they obviously know about the Friday night events. Most people attend the talks. But actually, as Sylvia said, the people who've been running the projects, I learned as chair, were really like the gold dust. Because there's a lot of people who can come, including myself, on a Friday night and partake in an interesting discussion. But actually, people who are willing to commit their time over a longer period of time and really give something of themselves for the betterment of others are few and far between. And those people who have the capacity to really lead others in volunteering and stuff, we have found to be really, the gold dust and the unseen people who are a valuable part of City Circle. So I'd really like to thank all of the people here on this panel, and many of the other people, some of whom are in the audience, who've really contributed to that work at City Circle. So in terms of the projects, finally, like the main one that most of you know about are the talks on a Friday night. And we've tried to really keep those at a wide range, because I think you would have seen from the discussion earlier that there was really an attempt to provide an open and comfortable space for Muslims to engage with one another and talk about issues relevant to our community. So it's really been about allowing Muslims to be whole, and that's in terms of their religion and spirituality, community issues, social issues, the arts, music, all of those things we've tried to create a platform for, and not edit out any of those things, because I think in many Muslim circles and organisations you feel like you can only be there from a certain point of view. And it's really important, I think, for our development and growth that we're able to embrace all of those aspects of human experience, and including non-Muslims. And I think that's been a really important part of what City Circle has done. So one of the things we've done to mark the 15 years is we thought it was about time that we tried to encapsulate our work somehow. So with the assistance of Rufal, we've made a short film to highlight or try and bring together what City Circle has been about in the past 15 years, which we're now going to put on and show you. So you can see the many people who've contributed to the making of City Circle. And I should point out Louise here, who's at the front, who's one of the leading people on the management team at the moment. And also I want to ask Sid Jifrey, who followed me as chair for a couple of years, and those of you who attended City Circle in that time would have known the tireless work that Sid did. In fact, everybody, it's really important, the work that the chairs have done and people who've organised the Friday night events. It's a lot of work to host events.